The topic of today is grit. And you say that and people get a little bit like, oh, what is grit? Like that stuff that clogs up on your teeth? No. It's not, it's not that. It's not that. So I'm talking about grit. And grit is just the personification of perseverance. That's really all it is. But why I'm here is a little bit different than what I'm going to be talking to you guys about. So that's the topic. But first and foremost, is 3 reasons that I came here today. The first of which I need everyone in here to know I'm talking to you because I love you. And that's not some cliche that I'm saying just to break the ice, but I'm genuinely invested in your success because I believe in a sense of community. I think that the only way that we all excel is if we help pull each other up. And so my hope is that today I can say something that makes you feel differently, makes you act differently, makes you go through life just a little bit differently. And even if not, maybe tomorrow, maybe just make you think about things a little bit differently. And so I already touched on my second point, which is I'm invested in your success. And the third point, we're going to jump into a little bit later. So to preface, and I want you guys to think about this question that I'm about to ask you, I guess, throughout the duration of my speech. And it is, are you giving life your all? Not a rhetorical question, but I mean, it's not meant for you to answer it for me either. This is something I constantly want you to ask yourself because I constantly ask myself this every day. And it's, am I giving this my all? Am I giving 110% in everything that I do? And when I ask most people, a lot of times their response is yes. And so my question is always, well, how do you know? And they always tell me because I felt like quitting and I kept going. And I think that's so important. I think that's a huge concept. I think that is pivotal to success in this life. But even in that, I think we all have a gross lack of understanding of how far we can really go when we really push ourselves. The Navy SEALs have this concept. It's called the 40% rule, and I love this. I mean, I'll be in the gym. I'm hitting my sets, and I'm like, oh, man, I feel my muscles getting tight, and it's like, no, one more. And it's called the 40% rule, and it is that when you get to the point where you feel like you are absolutely about to break, that there is nothing else you can do, you've only reached 40% of your body's your body's full potential and capacity to complete a task, to do whatever it is. If you're running and you feel like around mile 6, you hit 40%. That means you got a few more miles in you until you've given everything that you can. And I applied that to my own life because, I'm thinking about this. So there's this woman, her name's Angela Lee Duckworth. And she's written this book about grit. She's famous on the TED circuit and everything. But she says that in her book, grit is running life like it's a marathon and not a sprint. And I'm no expert, but I have to disagree with that because my personal experience has shown me otherwise. I don't like that idea because I think it flirts with the principle that you have to always keep something in a reserve tank. And that's just not how I operate. If I do something, I'm going to do it to the death. And I feel like that's where a lot of my success in life has come from. And that's where I constantly push. I always want to try to get that last inch in because I know if I do that, then most other people won't. So my definition of grit more so falls along the lines of whatever your race is, you run it like your life depends on it. And I know that sounds a little intense, but I mean, I'm going to tell you guys a story in a second. And I always get critiqued for being an intense person, but I don't personally feel like I'm intense. I've just learned that this thing we call life is more than a game that we treat it to be at times. And so we're going to jump right into the heart of the matter. And so I'm going to tell you guys a story. It's going to be about my life, and I hope in it that you can draw some parallels and see some similarities within your own life. Yes, the story is going to be a little bit different, but the lessons and the principles behind it are completely 100% the same. And so this is just going to be the journey of my college career. My first 2 years, when I tell y'all I kicked it in college, I kicked it. I mean, I had a good time. Every Friday by 3 p.m., I go to class. I want to preface with that. But every Friday at 3 p.m., I knew I was going to call my friends, and we were going to I was going to go home. I was going to take about an hour and a half nap, And then I was ready. I was Energizer Bunny for the rest of the weekend. And I was still doing great in school. Got straight A's my first semester. Every semester for my first 2 years of college, I did absolutely phenomenal in school. But even in doing well, I came to realize that what was good by everyone else's standards, I still had in me to do a little bit more. And that was something that as I got the lesson and I started looking at a lot of my friends, it was too many of them that felt like good enough was good enough. And I went through some things in life that really made me start to hate that idea. And so, like I said, the first 2 years were pretty much smooth sailing, but, and as many of you all are gonna see in college, there's always a but somewhere. But at the end of my second year, I will never forget this day as long as I live. My mother's birthday is May 10th, and it always falls around the time where the second semester is supposed to end. And so I'm calling her and I'm talking to her on the phone and I'm asking her, what do you want for your birthday? It's right around Mother's Day too, so it's like she get us with the double whammy. We got to come with 2 gifts so we're not getting talked to for a week. But I asked her what she wanted for her birthday. And she told me, I can remember it just like it was yesterday, she told me, honestly, I want a pair of shoes, but I just don't feel like I'm in a position to buy them for myself. I don't know about you all, but I know that was something that hurt me to my core, because my mother works too hard in my eyes to not be able to go buy a pair of $80 shoes. That just doesn't seem right. A woman that goes to work every day, she's studying, and that did not make sense to me. And so I let my last $150, I cashed in all my chips. I went to the store and I got her a Foot Locker gift card for $75 and a gift card to a restaurant with another $75. And there was an event on campus. It was about 3 days later. And I remember just sitting in there and I just started sobbing. I mean, uncontrollable, like almost ashamed to tell y'all this, because I'm in there, a grown man laying on people's shoulders, just bawling. It was ugly. It was ugly, right? You know that one cry you get where you just inconsolable. Yeah. It was that one. It was that one. And because in that moment it really hit me how dire of a financial situation we were in, to the point where my mother didn't feel like she could go buy shoes. And I didn't feel, I was a personal trainer on campus. I was making a few dollars here and there, but I realized that I wasn't doing everything that I could to help put them in a better financial situation, because they were having to take care of me more than I felt like they should have to. And so not too long after that, I went out and got a job. And anybody that knows me knows I love boxing, I love martial arts. And so I'd been training since I was 14, 15. I had quite the unique skill set. And I also had a broadcast journalism degree that I was working towards and taking summer classes for. If you know anything about journalism, you will know that when a source calls you, you have to be able to get up and move and go to them and get that interview that instant. And so I could not go work at Walmart. One, I'm just not the type of person that's going to take well to people yelling at me over a sale that I missed in the computer. I don't do well with things like that. But I knew that I needed a job that would pay me well, would require me to work minimal hours, and it would give me a completely flexible schedule. Now, y'all, that sounds a little unrealistic, especially for a college student, right? Well, I found it, and it was at a local bar. I'm not going to say the name of the establishment, but it was at a local bar and nightclub in town, because I was working nights. I was making more money than I had ever seen, that I had ever earned on my own in my entire life. It was great. And I never had to worry about it conflicting with my major, with what I was doing in school. And so I started working at this bar and nightclub, and I got promoted really quickly because I had a reputation for being the person that if you needed a situation handled and you were management, if you came and got me, regardless of who it was, how big they were, whatever the situation was, I was going to get it handled. And so I got promoted, and I'm seeing all this money coming in, but the environment I was working in was so toxic. When I tell you on any given day, you could walk in there, and of course it's a bar, so people are drinking, but people didn't get regular drunk here. They got like blackout, make the worst decisions they've ever made in their life drunk. It's a difference. And so they did that. There was that. On any given day, you could walk in and see a mound of cocaine on a table, on a bar stool, wherever. It was that type of environment. It was not the environment. I haven't even told them all of the stories that happened there. So, but it was one of the worst environments you could imagine putting yourself in as a student. And at the same time, yes, I was working nights, and it didn't conflict with school in that regard, but there's nothing like going to work from 9 p.m. to 3 a.m. and then getting up for an 8 a.m. class. And that was my life 2 to 3 nights out the week. On any given week, I was working minimum of about 20 hours. On the high end, I was working 50 hours. When I tell y'all I was determined to not have to keep going home and asking for money, I was so serious about that. And 3 things happened throughout that year that changed my life. And one of them happened at the bar. One of them happened in one of my classrooms. It was a journalism teacher. His name's Clyde Bentley. I love Clyde to death. He said something to me that really just made me reevaluate my life. And he looked me dead in my face. And this is a guy he was the first person to tell me he couldn't identify with anything that had happened in my life. He couldn't identify with being, a poor black kid from the south side of Chicago. There was nothing in my life that he could relate to on that. But he was a great writer. And anybody that knows me knows my passion is writing. I love writing. I love it. And so one day, he pulls me to the side after class. And he taught an editorial writing class, and his only rule was you can come in and everything you write has to be an opinion. I'm a very opinionated person, so that was perfect for me. And I get there, and he pulls me to the side one day, and I was the very militant, love to argue, very combative type. And he looks me dead in my face and tells me, with no fear, he looks me dead in my face and tells me, Corie, I'm going to tell you something. You have the potential to write for any publication in the country that you choose to. I've seen your writing. And to me, that made something in my spirit jump. I was like, this is good. I'm it, right? I'm feeling myself now. I'm all charged up. And then he tells me, but you will never get there if you don't change your attitude. And that was one of those things. I was like, what you mean change my attitude? I'm Corie. Like, what you mean? But he appealed to something that I loved, and I said to myself, it was something, if nothing else, I wasn't very receptive at the time. I was like, yeah, okay. But I went home and I thought about it. Second thing happened not too long after he told me this. And I was at work one day, and like I said, it was a very volatile environment. And by now, I've been working here long enough to most people know you don't come to this bar and start problems, because there's one guy there, if nobody else, he's going to handle it. He's going to handle it firm. He's going to handle it quick. He's going to handle it effectively. And he comes, there's this guy, this homeless guy. He comes and just basically starts a problem. Literally, it's funny looking back on it now, but he yelled every obscenity he could at me for the better part of 20, 25 minutes. I mean, he just reeling them off, just going. And I told him, I was like, I told my coworker, if he says one more thing to me, we're going to have a problem. And he said one more thing. And so I approached him and I just said, we're going to handle this one of two ways. Either you're going to do everything that you said you were going to do to me, and we're going to square this right now with these, or you're going to leave. And you're going to come back when you decide you want to handle this like a real man. Well, he did leave. And he came back about 15 minutes later. And he had about a 13-pound cinder block in his hand. And he threw it at me from the street corner. And it hit me square in my head. And I don't even remember being hit. I remember it being hit by it, but I couldn't tell you where he was, what really happened. I just saw I saw a brick on the side of the ground, and I just felt something warm coming down the side of my face. And so eventually my coworkers, they take me to the hospital, and I'm sitting there. EMTs basically tell me I barely have a single scratch on me. And if you could see the rock, it was about the diameter of a basketball. It was huge. And I was just sitting there thinking, and my coworker squirming as I'm getting the staples put in my head. And I'm just sitting there thinking, I have to be here for more than getting in street fights and bar brawls. I have to. It has to be more to what I'm doing in life than this. And so my last year of college, that happened towards the end of my junior year. And I made a conscious decision that I was going to start changing some things about my life. First thing was my attitude, because if anything gonna make you realize the person that gave you some wise advice was telling the truth, is getting hit upside the head with a brick, because you have a little bit too much of an air of invincibility. And so that was what happened at the end of my junior year. And I came to my senior year, and that was just largely a time of reflection for me. It was, and now that I've finished, praise God, and I'm on the other side of it, I really realized how much I changed over this year. And throughout all of that time, that's just one element of my life, because the other elements that are very crucial are the fact that I was working at an NBC affiliate news station as part of my major. And so a lot of people for their major, they might have to take a test or write a paper. And those are valid, don't get me wrong, but I knew that I had an actual job to complete that was part of my major. I was reporting for news segments. I was reporting segments that were going to go on the actual news that spread across about 35 counties. That is something it's very mentally taxing to know that the work that you do has impact like that. And so I was doing that, and that was taking up about 10 to 15 hours of my week on any given day, on any given week, in addition to the job that I'm doing, because the job I have to do for my major at the news station, that don't really pay the bills. I have to do that, but that wasn't my source. That wasn't how I was making money to help get through college and not have to call home and ask for money all the time. Since I stopped working, I call home a little bit more, but that's beside the point. But in any case, at the semester after that, I started producing. Producing is a 25-hour-a-week commitment. I have to do an overnight shift once a week, so that's another night a week I can't work. But as a whole, I was in a place where my classes went from being something that I could put moderate effort into and get exceptional results my first 2 years, to my third and fourth year being in a place where I literally had to give everything I had to get out that program. I slept at the news station. That was a real thing. I stayed in the lab longer than a lot of my peers because they picked up on things faster than me. They could see it once and get it. I had to see it 2, 3, 4 times before I got it, but I got it. And that is the crux of what I'm going to be talking to you guys about. That was just a little bit of an illustration for you to have a little bit of insight into my life. But the thing that got me through was grit, perseverance, plain and simple. Talent got me started. I can write, I can talk to people. That wasn't difficult. But these last 2 years, it took much more than what I already had in me. It took much more than just the talent that I had or the skills that I'd honed in high school and from my public speaking class. It took something extra. And grit, remember that 40% rule I told you guys about? Grit is just the difference between being at that 40% and making a conscious decision, making a choice to get to the 100%. So I've said all of that to get to the heart of the matter. And I just have a question for you guys. And be honest about it. Please be honest about it. Who here gets upset when they get a bad grade on an exam? Who you really get distraught. Like it hurts you. You go home and you don't sleep that night. I ask that because, largely, you all are here because you're smart. You care about your grades and you excel in school. And the things that we excel in, we don't usually take too well to the criticism of it. But one thing that all of this taught me is that you have so much more in you that you can do. You've overcome so much more than you can even really fathom. And you lived it. I didn't even live your life, but I know there's definitely something you've overcome that you didn't think that you would make it through. There's definitely something you've overcome that it just seemed like too big of a hurdle to jump. And so how do you get over that hurdle, that thing you thought would break you, and then get upset at a number on top of a piece of paper? That's a real question I want you to go home and ask yourself. How do you do all of this and then get upset by a monetary score that somebody put on a piece of paper. You can't put your worth in things like that. I'm not telling y'all don't go do well on your exams. I'm not telling you don't go do well on your exams at all. I promise you that. Y'all not going to be calling me talking about I'm the reason y'all don't have y'all scholarship. But I say all of that to say I love Rocky Balboa. And I think Rocky Balboa has a message that everybody, if you watch it, you can resonate. And in Rocky 6, he has this great quote. He's talking to his son, and he tells him, "This world is a mean and nasty place, and it will beat you to your knees and keep you there if you let it. You, me, or nobody is going to hit as hard as life. But it's not about how hard you can hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much punishment you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done." And that's all we're talking about today. We're talking about winning. We're talking about what it takes to keep going when you get that hit, when you feel like you're up against the ropes, when you feel like nothing's working out for you. You just have to stay the course. That's the heart of it. There's so much that you will achieve just based on not giving up. In a battle between the rock and the stream always wins. And it's not by strength or force. It's through perseverance, sheer will, the ability to say, I'm here, I'm willing, I'm ready, I'm not going anywhere, and the only way you're going to take this opportunity from me is if you take it from me. I'm not giving you anything. And that's the way I go about life all the time, because like I said, I was in a place where so many of my peers, they got it. They understood everything that we were talking about in class. And there was times I just, quite frankly, did not get it. But dollar for dollar, I was going to show up and I was going to outwork everybody in the classroom. I was going to be the guy that went to get the extra help. I didn't care if the teacher got sick of me. You weren't just going to be able to pass the TA off to me and tell them, talk to the TA, I don't like dealing with students. No. My tuition pays your salary, so you're going to talk to me. If you don't talk to none of your other students, you're going to talk to me. And that's the type of mentality you have to have. And so I've said a lot, but I feel like the sentiment that I'm working to deliver to you all is I feel like I've basically iterated it pretty well. And so I have 10 points that I want to leave you guys on. And the first one is that your grit must be rooted in something greater than yourself. I don't get up and hustle in school or whatever I do because I like to do well. That's part of it, but if I had to rank the things that push me, that fuel me in life, it's not that. It's the fact that I don't ever want to have to get a call from my mother again saying she feels like she can't go buy herself a pair of shoes. That's not a conversation I care to ever have again. You have to figure out something that you have to find something to root your grit in that is greater than yourself. I got home from college on Monday, and en route to my home, there was a shooting on the expressway. My grit is rooted in my family not having to live here for the rest of their lives, not having to experience these things. And I know this is something that many of you all can identify with because it's real and this is where we are. This is a few blocks in any direction in this city. So the second point is ignore the naysayers. It was people that flat out told my second semester, my very first journalism class, I'll never forget this day, my instructor looks at the lecture hall of 300 and he tells them statistically 1 in 3 of you won't make it. And I'm sitting in this class, I'm like, no, this man just didn't tell me I'm not going to make it. I done got hyped now. So I tell the person on my left and my right, I look at each of them and I tell them, one of y'all not going to make it. And they didn't like it, but that was the tail of the tape. And now I can stand here and say I did make it. So I got to roll through these next ones. So the third one is don't play yourself. Put yourself in the most advantageous position to succeed. If that's something that you need to do to succeed, it's your obligation to go do it. Because ain't nobody going to give you anything. Nobody's going to do it for you. If you want something, you have to go get it. If you're not doing well in the class, there's something you have to change. There's something you have to do differently. The last time I checked, teachers not just reeling off A's and B's. That's just not how it works. Point 4, have a chip on your shoulder when it comes to your success. I'm very combative when I feel like people are trying to take things away from me that I've worked for. Invest yourself in what it is that you want to achieve. Invest yourself. Make it more than just a goal. Make it a part of yourself. So that way, when someone does come and try to take it from you, or someone tries to tell you that you aren't worthy of it, you can shut that down because you know better. Don't ever just let people take things from you. Because as you grow and you get off into your careers, and I'm sure the alums can testify to the fact that people will try to take things from you that are rightfully yours. Point 5, get comfortable in uncomfortable situations. Most of the best things that are going to happen to you in life, most of the biggest blessings you're ever going to receive are not going to come from comfortable places. They're not going to come hand delivered to you in a bow. That's just not how it works. Sometimes you have to be willing to go to the deep, dark, uncomfortable, dirty places to get the things that you want. That's what I had to do with this degree. It was a grind every day, but I got it. And there is going to be something in your life that you're going to have to fight for. But don't get discouraged because it didn't come to you easily. Point 6, respect the process. It's just as simple as it sounds. It's going to be a process. There's going to be ups and downs, peaks and valleys, lows and highs. But your process is not going to look like my process. Your process is not going to look like her process, or his process, or her process, or his process. It's yours, so live it that way. Point number 7. Understand your grit will look different than mine. Your sense of perseverance will look different than mine. Mine is bold and defiant. You cannot tell me something negative and not expect a response. I'm just that type of way. But I'm not a crier, except for that one time. I'm not a crier, but some people are criers. But you do whatever it is that you need to do to get through it. If you got to cry, cry, but then keep going. Whatever your grit looks like, make it your own, but don't stop. That's the only caveat to this. Don't stop. If you have to cry and just take you a minute, but then you get back on the horse, do that. Because grit isn't always the bold, defiant, harsh word against you. Sometimes it's just a little voice in your head that's just going to tell you we're going to hit it again tomorrow. Point number 8. Always remember that it's already in you. It's just something that you have to tap into. All grit is a survival instinct. Man's had that since the beginning of time. It's something that's naturally going to push you. So don't ever feel like you don't have it. The only reason someone else might have more grit than you is because you've made a choice to let them. That's the only reason. All men are created equal. Some just work harder in preseason. Point number 9, go all in. Don't be afraid to get tired. I said this earlier. There's not an opportunity that I will allow to elude me because I did not work hard enough for it. I'm not afraid to do whatever it takes to get what I'm supposed to have. I have this philosophy in the gym. I have this philosophy when I'm studying. I have this philosophy in school. I have this in everything that I do. I'm not going to deprive myself. I'm not going to play myself and not get something that was for me because I didn't want to work for it. Point number 10 is simply always do right by people, and right will always come back to you. My third point that I addressed earlier as to why I'm here, I'm almost done. My third point that I addressed earlier as to why I'm here is just that, just as I had this message that I wanted to give to you, everyone in this room has given me a greater sense of accountability. Because now I have to make sure that I continue to go out and live the truth that I have told you all about today. I have to go to grad school, and quitting isn't an option because I have told you guys that you can't quit. So what do I look like going out and doing something that I've told other people not to do? What's one thing I can't stand in this world is a hypocrite. So those are my 10 points, and I'm going to end on one quick story. And this is just to illustrate to you the power of always betting on yourself. Always bet on you. So a year and a half ago, January 2015, I called him my mentor, my best friend, one of my best friends. His name is Justin McCain. He has 2 published books, We Could Be Heroes and A Poet Phase in College Days. Go to justmccain.com, check it out, shameless plug. But in any case, I called him, and I called him when I really need to talk. And I said, you know, man, I really want to start talking to people. I want to start delivering messages. And I'm going to give myself a year and a half to deliver my first speech, my first talk. And sure enough, this man, he said, okay. I felt like this was coming for a while. He told me to write it down on a piece of paper. He wrote over it. He wrote on it. We prayed over it. And then he said, all right, we're going to leave it alone. And it is what it is. Almost a year and a half to the day, I'm standing before you guys talking and giving my first speaking engagement. So don't ever sleep on yourself. Always bet on you. That's my time.